Well, as I'm sure is self-evident, this is the Richard and Judy Book Club. We're talking about the summer reads, all of these exclusively to W.H. Smith, and just a reminder, as usual, that if you do get the book either here online or direct from the store, in the back there is unique content, but only from W.H. Smith. There's a Q&A that we do with the author. We go into some detail. They tell us how and why they write the books. There's information on the podcasts you can download. Lots of free stuff, but only from W.H. Smith.
Okay, and this book, our next book in the summer reads, is Alice Bliss. It's a lovely name, blissful book. And it's written by Laura Harrington. And Laura's here with us now. Before we talk about the plot, this is your first novel, but actually you are a very accomplished, in the States, you're a very accomplished dramatist, playwright.
Go on, tell us what you've done.
Well, for 20 years I've been writing plays, musicals, operas, the occasional radio play, and one or two film and television scripts.
And which parts of them do you write?
Well, for plays, I write the entire script. For an opera, I write what's called the libretto, which is all the words and the story. And for a musical, I write the book and the lyrics generally.
But this is your first novel?
This is my first novel.
We absolutely loved it. It made me cry all the way through, really, although I'm a bit of a blubber. And I've actually given it to our daughter, who's 24, who's about to start reading it, and if she doesn't cry, I will be amazed. It's basically set in modern-day America, and it's about a guy, a lovely father, who's a volunteer reserve, as we would say.
Yes.
And he's called up, and he has to go to Iraq. And how old is he?
He is about 38.
38. So he's going into real danger, and he's leaving behind his lovely wife, beautiful wife. They're deeply in love. His two daughters, Alice and a younger sister, and they don't know what to make of it, do they? The wife in particular, now it's come to it, isn't sure whether she can forgive him for doing this.
Well, I think I was careful to choose the reserves as my part of the service that I talked about because they live within our communities. And until 2006, when the book was set, which was The Surge, we weren't relying on reserve troops in the way that we now are.
They didn't really think they'd have to go.
No. And it was very rare. They thought they would, you know, work every other weekend, just several weeks a year, and if there were any national disasters, they would be called up. No one really expected that this would be the case, and now it's completely commonplace.
Right.
So it must be, I mean, as obvious in the book, it must come as a terrible shock, not just to the man, but also to his family. And
Absolutely.
This is what happens. And Alice Bliss is 15, and she has a particularly close relationship with her father. And he is, Richard says, he's a really lovely dad. I mean, he is. He's sort of perfect, isn't he? Really, and
yes.
that was deliberate, because you wanted to get that that feeling of small town happiness compared with the huge and horrible and destructive events going on outside.
Exactly. Well, in any coming of age story, I think you're also trying to create Eden before we have to leave it. I also really wanted to write a wonderful father-daughter relationship because I don't find that there are very many of them in our literature. And that was kind of an interesting angle for this girl. I
thought, again, what really tugs at the heartstrings is that this drama, of course it's happening within the family, but it's these huge forces are reaching down into their world, grabbing him and dragging him away from them. And he's sort of going willingly. He feels it's his duty as an American citizen. He's very patriotic, without making him a sort of a redneck, but he's genuinely patriotic and feels it's a job to be done. And his wife's very conflicted about it, isn't she? She gives him a hard time, doesn't she?
Absolutely. I think she feels betrayed.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things she's grappling with in the early parts of the book is how angry she is.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a common response. It would not be the response of a full-time
no, she's not an army
soldier.
wife. This isn't an army family.
If she were an army wife, this would be her mission as well,
Yeah.
and her mission to take care of the family and all the rest of it. And I think that's why Angie is stumbling at the beginning in terms of her ability to take care of the family. And before they kind of pull that together and they make their routines of how to take care of each other, they're getting bad news.
Yeah, they do, and come to that in just a minute. Let's talk about this father-daughter stuff. Alice is exceptionally close to her father. You say you wanted to write about a father-daughter relationship, but is this something that you've seen firsthand, this kind of specific kind of warmth between father and daughter?
I experienced this kind of warmth between father and daughter when my father was much, much older. I did not experience it when I was a child. I experienced it as an adult.
Right.
I see it with my husband and my daughter. They have a very close relationship. And my dad died a year before I started to write the book, and he was in the service. And I think that part of my inspiration for the book was wanting to do honor to what he had done and what he had taught me. And you know, my dad that's my father's garden in the book.
Oh, is it really? Because Alice and her dad, they do the garden, and they pick the plants, they work out what they're going to plant that season, you know, what are they going to eat, what are they going to look at that's pretty. Yeah, it's lovely, it's a lovely thing. And she carries on with the garden when he's overseas. Now let's talk about Alice and her, oh, yes, go on.
I was just going to say, just before that, we were still talking about father-daughter relationships. You say you've got a daughter who's very close to your husband. Did she read the book?
She did, and she was in high school when she read it, and I gave it to her sort of in fear and trembling, thinking, okay, this is my, you know, and she's also super bright, so of course it's a big deal. And it was taking her a while, and of course I'm thinking, oh, she was able to put it down, that's really bad. So I said, Kate, you know, just give me all the bad news at once, you know, that it's no good and you don't want to finish it. And what she said to me was, I can't stand it, it's too real.
Yeah, it's very painful.
And then she finished it actually on a subway and called me from a payphone it's just sobbing, saying, you know.
So I think that kind of gives us the fact away that it's not a happy ending, guys. Okay.
So maybe I've got something here.
Oh, you certainly have. I think one of us wrote in our review of your book that goes on the website and elsewhere that it's a bit like reading Alice's private diary that she writes to herself at the end of each day. Because he goes and there's a terribly affecting scene when he gets on the army bus and wordlessly takes his watch off and gives it to Alice, somewhat to her mother's chagrin. But anyway, we'll leave that to the book. And then it's Alice's account of how family life staggers on. Her mother falls to pieces for a while, and Alice has to do the cooking for the mother and the younger sister and all of that. And they get very occasional crackly phone calls from which is it?
He's in Iraq. He's near Fallujah.
Fallujah, that's right. But mostly letters. That's the communication, and they're not that regular. And it's really Alice who keeps the family going. As I say, she does the cooking, she does the shopping, she helps her mother, she bears with her irritating younger sister, and falls in love with the boy next door. And I love that aspect of the book, that normal life continues. It's not all about this wrenching, pulling apart of the family. She gets on with her life. And I love that romance because he's her playmate, isn't he? So they've been kind of playmates since they were little kids. And then that evolves into something different.
You mentioned earlier that, you know, it says it's not giving anything away, but there is bad news. We won't go into detail. And you say that basically, you know, you have known of reservists, ordinary people who suddenly find they have to serve. Presumably that has happened to quite a lot of them. Have you met any families who've had that situation?
I've had the good fortune, actually, I interviewed one reserve soldier while I was writing the book who was incredibly kind to me, but since writing the book I've met several military spouse bloggers who have written to me about their experience reading the book, and so it was sort of trial by fire. And
it must be horrific because, as you said, they're not army wives. They're not steeled for it. It's not part of their culture.
Nor are they within a community that's set up to help support them.
Absolutely.
And I think that was a conscious choice on my part, however, so that we would feel that this could happen to us. And also to isolate them more, and it creates greater.
Well, it ends beautifully because it shows that whatever happens, we won't say what it is, there is a kind of redemption, and there is the possibility, even if a catastrophe occurs, to carry on and to rebuild, and not to get stuck in the dark place. Beautiful book.
Thank you.
Beautiful book. And as soon as our daughter Chloe has read it, I'll email you and tell you what to do.
I would love to hear what she says.
But I'm sure it's going to be very good news.
Will be. And interesting news, because Laura was just telling us that she's so involved in the world of musicals. You're actually in discussions about making a musical about Alice.
We are. We are
Alice
talking
Bliss.
to a small off-Broadway theater in New York called Playwrights Horizons about Alice Bliss.
Wow, that's
wonderful.
That'll be a tough call.
They did my first musical as well, way back when.
But won't that be a tough call? I mean, getting the music exactly right.
It would be heart-rending.
The tonality of it is going to be very tough.
Well, it's the composer that is driving this. I've written 2 projects with her, something called Crossing Brooklyn and a second piece, Alice Unwrapped, which was the inspiration for the book. And she's brilliant, and she hears this book as a musical.
Well, if you don't enjoy Alice Bliss, I'll eat my shorts.
You're not wearing any.